Good morning, everybody. It's about 5:30 in the morning here in lovely East Lyme, Connecticut. I walked outside with a t-shirt on for the first day in all winter, so maybe optimistically it'll be in the 60s today, or even in the 50s would be a heat wave. But I wanted to get started at least with my vlog about my journey through some problems I've had, and kind of talk about the stuff I talked about while I was in the Navy, that had some I'll say some following a little bit. So I would go and speak at some of the CPO or Chief Petty Officer, which is one of the ranks, events, and I would be talking about things like suicide prevention, depression, operational stress, and that kind of stuff. So, quite a few people grabbed on to it, and it was only recently, after I went to a Dave Ramsey event, where I realized that this was something that I could possibly provide to everybody else. But we'll see. Time will tell. This is the first one, of course. So pardon me while I drink my coffee, and it is 5:30 in the morning, and I read from my notes because, again, 5:30 in the morning, so brain's not working so good. So first thing I want to talk about was the kind of the stigma of what it is to suffer from anything. Talk about drug problems. Everybody thinks, once a druggie, always a druggie, right? So same thing with mental health. In my experience, having been diagnosed and trying to be honest about it with all of my my commands throughout, probably from 2013 on, there's only one place where they actually accepted me, and that was the place where I got diagnosed. I worked with some guys at the Pentagon, went and got some help, changed my entire personality, changed everything about myself. It was a fantastic turnaround. And but that was the only place that ever really accepted me. Everybody else didn't really understand, even though I was very forthcoming with, hey, if you have questions, ask. Suffering from major depressive disorder, a couple of other things, to include Tourette's, which is super fantastic. That's because of my Lyme disease. But nobody really took on it. In fact, I was in England, and one of the guys actually told me never to talk to anybody about it. But I found that even at NATO, when you're talking to folks from other nations, they're very sympathetic about it as well, because they understand. And it's an interesting story about how people take care of it in various nations, and how they do their own self-medicating, or how they resolve their issues. America is one of the only places that does mental health the way we do, right or wrong or indifferent. Quick couple of stats just to throw it out there, just to kind of not scare anybody, but some things I kind of like to focus on. Looked up recently that suicide was the 10th leading cause of death in, I think it was America, if I'm not mistaken. The stats were taken. And then what helped me along, especially being able to sell the idea that a lot of people need help, is in, I believe it was 2012 or 2011, the U.S. Army lost more people to suicide than to combat action. I think it was in the range of somewhere like 357 soldiers they lost. And so that's where I got help. I got help at an Army facility. It was an Army-ran clinic up at Bethesda. And they helped me out a lot. They helped diagnose me with things like high-functioning autism, Asperger's, which kind of explained a lot about my childhood. And they helped me with a therapist. I'd never had a therapist before. In fact, I thought it was hokey as hell. And then when it got right down to it, I realized what the therapist was all about. And I'll talk about that in a couple of minutes here, and probably later in this video. So anyway, so the Army had done a really significant round turn on trying to take care of people with their mental health stuff. And I'm sure they've got the same problem that we do, where there's people that think they're a piece of crap for going and tapping out or whatever. I mean, I was in the submarine force, so we had a significant issue with guys treating these guys like crap. Even up to it's 2018. I retired in August of 2017. I was still hearing the stuff about, about people tapping out and people being weak and people being pieces of shit for not gutting it through. But I don't want to say necessarily times have changed. Our understanding of things have changed. And just because somebody seeks help doesn't mean they can't come back. I'm a prime example of that. I went and got help when I was already an E8 in the Navy. I have a top secret clearance, which even today I've been able to keep up with. So it's not career ending to be able to go and get help, at least in the military. So I'm not sure about the other side where, private sector, but I'll definitely be looking into that as time goes on. I do intend to do one of these videos at least once a week. I'd like to. It just depends on what I can pull out of my tail. And I do open and welcome people to send stuff in, and I'll answer questions, and I'll read your story if you'd like. If you don't want me to give your name, I'll just give a first name, and we'll talk about your story. But anyway, moving along. So again, talk about the stigma. I know my grandparents and my parents' generation, even today, they struggle with the idea that I had issues, and they won't talk about it. And I don't understand that. It's a medical problem, no less concerning than a bunion, but we'll talk about a bunion. So I know, anybody who's been around old people for more than about 7 seconds knows they love talking about bunions. I don't know what it is about bunions, but anyway. So high blood pressure, anything. In fact, they'll talk about Parkinson's disease before they'll talk about mental health issues. And I think it's just that generation where they don't believe that it's something that should be talked about. So I know for me, for one, being able to discuss it with my parents and grandparents has been exceedingly difficult, because they just don't understand why somebody would talk so openly about it. And even going and doing my talks for the Navy, there were senior folks in the room who would kind of cringe a little bit when I was talking about, like, bro, really? You're going to talk about this? This is like talking about, I don't know, sex in public. It's kind of gross. Even then, sex in public has become a norm, but, you're stressed out. Like, yeah, I talk about it because then I don't get stressed. That's my way to resolve it. So that's, but again, people just, it's very difficult to talk about it. And my worry, and I thought about it recently, my worry is I know I served with a lot of guys when I was very young in the military, in 1999 or so. And I kind of look back and I think, where's their support system? The guys that were sailors in the 80s, and we were in the Cold War, and these guys were dealing with stress every day and told they couldn't go up to medical, told they couldn't do nothing. And basically have continued on. Are they getting the help they need? Are they defeating the stigma as well? Are they being treated like pariahs? Do they go down to the sub-vets and can't really talk about it? Because again, I kind of parallel those guys. If you've never seen, they're hardworking dudes. Trust me, I was raised by these men. But you go down to some of the places and you have the feel like it's the Vietnam era type guys who came back and had no help. And where they were looking for help and were unable to get it, I think some of the guys, at least in my opinion, this is just by my observation, no truth, no, I can't point to a piece of paper and say this study says this, but in my opinion, my view, having gone through some of the things I've gone through, I can look at these guys and without a doubt, in my mind, say these guys are also suffering. The problem is, I don't think it's the problem that the care is not available, although with the VA, it's pretty, I don't know, I can get in that later. But I think it's the stigma. That's what I think. I think it's definitely the stigma. Next thing I want to talk about real quick is something that caught my attention at the Dave Ramsey show, which was Zig Ziglar's Wheel of Life. I'll go through the topics here. I'm not going to show up any kind of fancy graphic or anything like that. If you're really interested, just jot down some notes, kind of the true testament to you wanting to help you. So let me go through it here real quick. So the Wheel of Life is a circle, right? And it's career, which has an arrow into financial, and then into spiritual, into physical, intellectual, family, and social, which then comes back to career. Okay, I'm going to talk about very quickly kind of how that affects me personally, but thinking about something, just an idea of how you're balancing these plates, as it were. Each one of them has its own little thing, and we all have weaknesses in each of the categories. We all have weaknesses, or we all have strengths as well in all the categories. However, just something to think about. So for career, for me, I got zero satisfaction in my last couple of jobs. I was basically taken into places where, excuse me, I don't think I was treated well, and I didn't respond well. So it was a double, both of us kind of going at each other, both my job, my bosses, going at me and me going back at them. So it was kind of a miserable go of it. I didn't feel like I had any value to those guys. So it's a bit hard to get any job satisfaction out of working in a place where you really don't enjoy. I should have transferred, to be fair. I should have just left. But, the nice thing is the job, even though it was a military job, I had that option at any point. And I was just always trained as a submarine guy that you just don't leave. You got to gut it through and figure it out. But that wasn't the right answer. I should have shifted mentalities. But for career, right now I'm working for a group of guys, which is a former boss I had back in like 2004, and phenomenal guy, great head and shoulders, just an excellent, just all around man that you want to go and follow. He's got a presence about him that makes sense, and when he asks you to do something, you don't just, okay, let me go do it. You actually want to do it for him. You genuinely want to do it for him. I may be a bit too aggressive, he might say himself, because I'm excited to be working for the first time in probably upwards of like 5 years, like really working and enjoying it. So something to think about. You have to enjoy your job. If you're not enjoying your job, figure something else out. I'm not saying quit, just figure something else out. You might not be playing to your strengths. Like, for example, I know my strengths are administrative. Sadly, I don't like admin, but my strengths are administrative, to be fair. So even though when I was thinking about retirement, I was like, I'm never going to be an admin guy in the Navy or in the civilian workforce. Never, never, never. I'm walking away. I'm really good at it. That's the sad part. And my boss now has shown me that that's the truth of it, that I'm really good at it, and I can provide to a good group of people something positive. If that makes sense. All right. Financial. Most divorces are caused by financial issues. I don't know if you knew that, but that is a fact. Most divorces, somebody's hiding money. They're in dire straits. Mama doesn't want to be in debt. Daddy doesn't give a shit and wants his car, kind of thing, or vice versa. Even let's be quite fair. But financial issues are not something that my wife and I have too much of an issue with. I was fortunate to be able to retire, and she ran the finances for the majority of our marriage. And fantastic job of being able to put together budgets and keep us out of debt. Back in 2014, we actually started doing Dave Ramsey's program, for example, and I retired utterly debt-free with the exception of my house. So now we're back on track with that. We're running along, we're moving forward, so we're stable to where my retirement and my disability check alone can support us. Not well, trust me, we're not going to be eating steaks and lobster every day, but that's the truth of it, is my retirement paycheck and my disability check both can support us if both of us, and we've got 3 kids, we could both be supported rather and not have to work. Like working for my boss, I don't have to do it. How many times have you heard guys say, once I retire, I'm going to sit around and do nothing all day? I did that for a couple of weeks. That's boring as hell. I'm not going to lie.